Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mr. Aleister Crowley. This is Liber 4. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link from my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we're going to dive in and we should be able to smash through several of these chapters today. Let's just dive in. Alright, so we are continuing part 2, chapter 10, The Lamp. In Liber A Vel Armorum, the official instruction of the A Delta for the preparation of the elemental weapons, it is said that each symbolic representation of the universe is to be approved by the superior of the magician. To this rule, the lamp is an exception. It is said, "A magic lamp that shall burn without wicker oil, being fed by the ether, this shall he accomplish secretly and apart, without asking the advice or approval of his adeptus minor." Alright, so it may glow, but it is not burning. Right? We talked about ever-glowing lamps, ever-burning lamps. This, however, is an allegory for your internal, right? This is your will, is the fire that creates. It is the part that refines. It is the lamp that is you. The light that you put on the hill is you, right? That is what this is. And so it is not an actual lamp that you are actually creating out of actual things. Therefore, it doesn't need a wicker and oil. It is fed by the ether, and you are fed by the ether. No flame is fed by the ether. And so, there we go. I know that is with the realization that the flame symbolizes the spirit. It is the visible evidence of change happening. That is why we use that. That's why so many different cultures have venerated fire over the years. This lamp is the light of the pure soul. It hath no need of fuel. It is the burning bush, inconsumable, that Moses saw, the image of the Most High. No. You cannot read the book of Exodus and say that that was the pure light of the soul. He saw the burning bush and he went and told him, "Do not be afraid." And then he walked up to it and told him, "Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground." There's a whole lot that went into it, but at no point in time was that the internal lamp. Right? Not according to the story, not if you read it literally. Now, I don't believe that that story should be read literally in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. It should only be taken historically with a lot of salt, as context reveals that there are many things in there that are absolutely not true. Right? There are many things that might be true. There are some things that are true, but there's a lot of things that are not true. Most of the life of Moses, as a matter of fact, is probably untrue. I only say probably because you can't prove it either way. There is no real significant reason to believe that Moses ever existed. This lamp hangeth above the altar. It hath no support from below. Its light illumes the whole temple, yet upon it are cast no shadows, no reflections. That lets you know right there that it is not a real thing, right? There is no such thing as no shadows. There will be shadows no matter what. It cannot be touched, it cannot be extinguished, in no way can it change. For it is utterly apart from all those things which have complexity, which have dimension, which change and may be changed. It is very vitally important to remember that flame is quite literally the epitome of change. This is visible physical change. This is changing from butane into carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and several other different compounds. And the exothermic reaction that you see is the visible evidence of that change. So, if your light cannot be changed, and it can be the spiritual light, right? This is all allegory. It is not to be taken literally. I am being a little bit assholish by reading it that way. But right, we have to differentiate. The light of the soul cannot be extinguished even when the temple goes away. The light goes back to the source. It is a change that occurs. There may even be a visible demonstration of that. Right? There is that flash of death. The flash of life is the same thing. Whenever life is created, there is a spark. Whenever life goes away, there is equally a spark. And so the no shadows, no reflections is talking about the internal light, but even then, that is not going to be a thing. There will always be the shadow side. There will always be something left to assimilate, something left to learn. You will not have perfect knowledge, and only perfect knowledge would be the light with no shadows. You don't have perfect knowledge. I don't have perfect knowledge. Nobody incarnated has perfect knowledge, and so any internal is also going to have the shadow. Now that is you interpreting this, and if you can see the light, that means that there is shadow somewhere, because without the shadow, the light does not exist. Without the light, the shadow does not exist. These things are intrinsic to each other. One cannot exist without the other, except possibly allegorically as a spiritual revelation type of thing, which is what this is intimating, right? The light illumines the whole temple. That is you. You are the temple, not any external structure. The body in which you reside, because you are not the body in which you reside is the temple of God, in which is invested a small piece of God, which is you, the individualized soul. And so, the spirit is the part of that is the fire. Fire is the Holy Spirit. It is the Logos. Quite literally, no one person has ever been the Logos, but every single person is a representative of the Logos. The Logos is change occurring, and that is happening in your body every single minute, every single second, every single nanosecond. There is some change occurring within you, and we get to see each other because of that. Okay, so I think that got all of that, right? I was being a little bit assholish to read it literally. It is obviously an allegory, but, right, differentiation. There is the eternal spark that is you. That part cannot be put out. Every other light can be extinguished. When the eyes of the Magus are fixed upon this lamp, nothing else exists. Okay, this is also the light from within, right? The unfolding golden flower, that is one of the best ways to go about the visualization side of this, in my estimation. We have done the golden flower. It's part of the Infinite Integrations playlist. It's got its own. But part of that was, we talked about, in the meditative state, if you are doing it correctly, there will be a point in which a light comes to you. You can be in a completely dark room, completely isolated from all light sources, and in this state of meditation, you will be overwhelmed by a light. That is the light revealing itself to you. And part of the things that we do in here is redirect that light, to direct it where it needs to be in the appropriate ways, right? That light is the light of the Spirit. It fills you completely. The eyes of the Magus are fixed upon it in internal reflection. During the meditative state, you are not doing this looking out there. This is entirely internal, entirely reflexive, and even me, who has a fantasia, has this happen every single time that I actually do a meditative process, and I do it correctly. The light unfolds itself to me every single time, and once again, I have no control over that. I have a fantasia. That part happens, and so there is this light. It can be interpreted as the lamp. If that is the lamp, then it is completely external, even though you observe it internal. Back to the text. The instruments lie idle on the altar, and that light alone burns eternally. The divine will that was the wand is no more, for the path has become one with the goal. The divine understanding that was the cup is no more, for the subject and object of intelligence are one. The divine reason that was the sword is no more, for the complex has been resolved into the simple. And the divine substance that was the pentacle is no more, for the many has become one. This is the assumption of the oneness, right? The the being in the oneness, right? All of these different understandings of the meditative process, the cup of understanding, the sword of divine will, the dagger of direction, right? These allegories no longer exist because you have become absorbed with the oneness. You are no longer thinking your individualized thoughts. You don't maintain the sword. You don't direct the dagger. You don't fill the cup, right? None of that is occurring. You are in the state of meditation, and the state of meditation is not an active one, right? We talked about it before. Let's hit it again. Prayer and meditation are two different things. Prayer is the active part. You are asking for things. You are seeking direction. You are moving the energies. All of that is prayer. It is your will setting a goal, setting an intention. Meditation is the removal of your own will from yourself. It is sitting in the stillness that is. It is unfolding the light, the golden flower. It is becoming one with all things. And part of that process is you kind of blend into everything. You feel the pull of the creative forces. That is what happens in this. That's what he's talking about now. It does not appear from the evidence of his life that this was a practice that he placed in value in his life at all. Right? He has borne nothing but rotten fruit throughout the entirety of his life. So obviously he was not fertilizing the garden correctly. But even doing it incorrectly can bear some fruit. It's just the bad fruit. Right? It's a little bit rotten. It might make you sick. It may even kill you. Right? If you're doing it wrong, all of that is a possibility. But at least this part is explained correctly, right? Even if he has done everything else wrong, this is correct. The cup is no more. The sword is no more. The pentacle is no more. And that is not physical corporeal tools, but the mental internal realizations that these things bring. And we've just spent the last 3 days talking about that, so eternal, unconfined, unextended, without cause and without effect. The holy lamp mysteriously burns without quantity or quality, unconditioned and sempiternal is this light. It is not possible for anyone to advise or approve, for this lamp is not made with hands. It exists alone forever. It has no parts, no person. It is before I am. That's a problem. Now, this is the you saying I am, and that is a daily affirmation that I do, right? I am a teacher. I am a teacher. I am a creator. I am a counselor. I am a... Right? The I am statements are very important things, at least in what I do over here. But there is also the I am that was the Logos coming to be, right? Before the beginning, there was God, and he was infinite and without form. And then God decided to create and therefore limited himself from the infinite into the finite, which is known as spirit. At the moment in which the infinite became the finite, spirit became, all was created, but all was in stasis, sitting perfectly still. Every element in existence, no compounds because there was no movement yet. And then God spoke and said, I am the light. And the light was, and the light was good. And that is how Genesis goes. If you were unaware, fall back to the Bible study if that is confusing. Right? You can start in Genesis. We get into it pretty quickly. And so the I am statements are very important, but this is the internal I am of the mortal, not the I am of the Logos being set in motion. There is an important distinction there. Few can behold it, yet it is always there. For there is no here, nor there, no then, nor now. All parts of speech are abolished, save the noun. And this noun is not found either in human speech or in divine. It is the lost word. The dying music of whose sevenfold echo is I-O and Om. Without this light, the magician could not work at all, yet few indeed are the magicians that have know of it, and far fewer they that have beheld its brilliance. Okay, so, no noun, true. Right? If you are in the state of meditation, you are at one with everything. There is no separation. There is no need for nouns. Okay. There is no need for speech. Okay. The lost word, the dying music, whose eightfold echo, not sevenfold. That is important, right? The harmonic is not 7 notes. The octave makes 8. There are 8 steps, right? The 1 and 8 are a repeat of each other, but it is at a higher vibrational level beginning the new pattern. You cannot separate that from this process, right? The 8 represents the eternal part of this process. And without the eternal, there is no progression. There are 7 internal, 1 external chakra. The 7 internal are for you. The 1 external is also for you, but that is the divine communication, the vessel through which you travel, the Merkaba that is you. Right? And so there are 8 steps. The harmonic contains 8, not 7. But there is also this lost word. Now, I have said repeatedly that I have a word, right? I have a word that I got in my experience. I come close to telling you what it is many times, right? I cannot give you the exact pronunciation of it because I don't have it correct, right? There is no correct pronunciation. It is a sound, not a word. Dying music, whose eightfold is the full harmonic, the entire octave. And it does sound a little bit like I or om. That is true. But it is something that you have to witness, to bear for yourself. I cannot give you the correct word. It is not a possibility. I can give you the closeness. It sounds like magnetics. I got a whole video where we talk about that. But I cannot give you the fullness of the word. I cannot. It is not possible for me to pronounce it correctly. I don't know where the sound starts and where it ends, and therefore you cannot give the beginning and the end. That is important when you're talking about this. The lost word I have used it, even though I cannot pronounce it. It is an internal thing, and again, I can't give you any more than that. I try, I get as close as I can, but there are some things that you have to experience. I cannot give them to you. I can bring you to the gate. I cannot open it for you. The temple and all that is in it must be destroyed again and again before it is worthy to receive that light. That is a disagreement. Hence, it so often seems that the only advice any master can give to any pupil is to destroy the temple. Right now, destroying the temple is you. Now, that can be destroying your idol worship, right? That would be good. But destroying the temple does not imply that, right? Destroying does not imply restructuring, right? It is not fixing. It is destroying, tearing down completely, and that is not advisable, right? You have problems. Everybody has problems. There is shadow work that needs to be done. True. There is no need to tear down a temple by anyone, ever, for these things. Now, the external temples, they make no difference. I don't care if you tear down every stone from one another, although that never really happened. Right? And that's another thing that they have a real big problem with in the New Testament, is because the Wailing Wall still exists, and as far as we know, that is part of the Second Temple. There was no tearing down of all the stones. Big problem for your prophecies. There is no destruction of your temple. There is destruction of the idol worship that you hold within your temple. The sacraments that you place in value can be destroyed. It's not going to destroy the temple. That is up to him. That should never be up to you, although you have that choice. You have that choice right now. You have that choice on this path, right? You will be presented with that choice on this path, even. And so, you should not be setting out to destroy your temple. You should set out to refine it. You should set out to beautify it, to cleanse it, to make it as perfect for the Lord as you possibly can. But bear in mind, it will never be perfect. Destroy the temple. Whatever you have and whatever you are veils before that light. Yet, in so great a matter, all advice is vain. There is no master so great that he can see clearly the whole character of any pupil. What helped him in the past may hinder another in the future. True. Yet, since the Master is pledged to serve, he may take up that service on these simple lines. Since all thoughts are veils of this light, he may advise the destruction of all thoughts, and to that end teach those practices which are clearly conducive to such destruction. The destruction, again, is not necessarily destroying, right? It is dismissing. In the state of meditation, you should not be having thoughts. Any. Positive, negative, forward, backwards, anything. It should be a state of no thoughts. It takes time to get there. It will take practice. And so you can look at it as destruction, but that is kind of putting a negative spin on something that is not negative, right? Back to that victim mentality stuff. I have to destroy these thoughts because they are holding me back. No, you have to master those thoughts. You have to discipline those thoughts. You have to exclude those thoughts, to refine those thoughts, but you don't have to destroy them. Terminology is so very important. So very important. These practices have now, fortunately, been set down in clear language by the order of the A Delta, A Delta. In these instructions, the relativity and limitation of each practice is clearly taught, and all dogmatic interpretations are carefully avoided. Each practice is in itself a demon which must be destroyed, but to be destroyed it must first be evoked. Shame upon that master who shirks any one of these practices, however distasteful or useless it may be to him. Yeah, see. If he is talking about this specific chapter, then he might have an argument. If he is talking about this entire section, he does not. And if he is talking about the book thus far, he does not. But on top of that, I am not a master. I do not claim to be a master. I may, at some point, like 90 years in the future, consider myself one, but I probably won't make it that far. I mean, we are on a path of progression. That path of progression does not have an end until the breath ends, until the temple goes away by its own volition, not yours. And so, I don't consider myself a master. I don't consider other people masters. We are all adepts at best on the path. All I can do is show you the road that I have been on. I cannot force you to walk it, right? I don't have that capacity or that desire. I am showing the way that I have found, right? We are all searching for the way. There are many paths to the way. The path that I have been upon, I have outlined in a book so that you can at least get some guideposts to help you find your particular path on the way. And there have been several practices, the dagger or the chain, the scourge, those in particular, right? And there were more, but those in particular, you can dismiss completely. The put yourself into painful positions so that you can achieve this state of nirvana, you can dismiss that completely. You can shirk that practice. And I don't care if you think that I am wrong for that. I have the results that Mr. Crowley never did. For in the detailed knowledge of it, which experience alone can give him, may lie his opportunity for crucial assistance to a pupil. However dull the drudgery, it should be undergone. If it were possible to regret anything in life, which is fortunately not the case, it would be the hours wasted in fruitful practices which might have been more profitably employed on sterile ones. What? Okay, now this doesn't make any fucking sense. If the practice was fruitful, right, it is not hours wasted. If the practice is fruitful, then there are no time wasted. What? Like, it's not wasted time if you are bearing the fruits. Now, granted, there are some fruits that are worse than others. See Mr. Crowley's entire life. But if you are bearing the good fruit, right, the time is not wasted. It is not wasted at all. As a matter of fact, you really can't do that. Right? If you are upon the path, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but if it takes you a little bit longer, that was the time that it was supposed to take. You didn't waste any. and might have been more profitably employed on sterile ones. So, you should be doing things that bear no fruit? Are you kidding me? Now, I mean, I'm not surprised to see that from Mr. Crowley at all, because we've read through his life, but are you kidding me? Right? Instead of doing things that will bring you fruit, you should have spent your time on on things that will not bring you any fruit. Huh? For Nemo, footnote, Nemo is the master of the temple, whose task it is to develop the beginner. Well, isn't that fucking awesome? Y'all know who Nemo was? Oh, no, it was Nero. Never mind. I was about to shit all over him. I mean, Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned, right? And he was one of the people responsible for the destruction of the Republic. And if they named it Nemo, I was like... But that was a mistake on my part, so whatever. For Nemo is tending his garden, seeketh not to single out the flower that shall be Nemo after him. What is this? Like, there was a Finding Nemo, yeah, whatever. I'm looking for what is the actual definition of Nemo. About the watching, Finding Nemo, like... Is there anything else than Finding Nemo? Let's do this. Not movie. No. Alright, well, if you know what Nemo is, I'm not going to waste any more time. If you know what Nemo is, let me know down below. Like, the master of the Nemo, I think, it can't just be this, right? The master of the temple, he drew the name from somewhere. It has been used in other places as well, right? Not just Finding Nemo. There was a video game back in the 90s that was Nemo. And so there was something around Nemo. I don't know what it is, though. And are we not told that Nemo might have used other things than those which he actually does use? It seems possible that if he had not the acid or the knife, or the fire or the oil, he might miss tending just that one flower which was to be Nemo after him. Alright, so that brings us to the end of, what was that? I didn't forget what it was, the lamp. Now we go to the crown. This is chapter 11, the crown. The crown of the magician represents the attainment of his work. It is a band of pure gold, on the front of which stand 3 pentagrams, and on the back, a hexagram. The central pentagram contains a diamond, or a great opal. The other 3 symbols contain the Tao. Around this crown is twined the golden uraeus serpent, with erect head and expanded hood. Under the crown is a crimson cap of maintenance, which falls to the shoulders. Instead of this, the Ateth crown of Teote is sometimes worn, for Teote is the god of truth, of wisdom, and the teacher of magic. Some people may be a little bit thrown off by my pronunciation of Teote, but if you go to Egypt today, this is how this word would be pronounced. The TH is T to them. It is in here twice. The O is long. It is Teote. There are people that call it Thoth, but that is an Anglicization. That is English. That is not the original pronunciation, and bear in mind that we do not have the original pronunciation. Even what they speak in Egypt now is not what was speaking in Egypt 1,000 years ago. As a matter of fact, if I was to go back in time, in history, 100 years ago from today, I would have a hard time communicating with people in the same area that I am in. Right? English has changed in the last 100 years to a point where it's almost unrecognizable from what they spoke. If you go back another 100 years, it is even more so. If you go back 400 years, more so than that. And language is constantly evolving. The pronunciation of words are evolving. I use Teote because that is the current pronunciation of it, and not the English version of it, which is what Teote or what Thoth would be, or Thoth. That's even worse. The Atef crown has 2 ram's horns, showing energy, dominion, the force that breaks down obstacles, the sign of the spring. Between these horns is the disk of the sun. From this springs a lotus, upheld by the twin plumes of truth. And 3 other sun discs are upheld, one by the cup of the lotus, the others beneath the curving feathers. There is still another crown, the crown of Amun, the concealed one, from whom the Hebrews borrowed their holy word. Amen. If you are unaware, we are doing a study of the Hebrew language over on this channel on Saturdays. We are doing it at noon Central Time. That is, seems to be a good time to work it out. And Jason from Green Country Agroforestry is taking us through the Hebrew alphabet and what the actual words mean and where they came from to a small degree. We're getting some of the spiritual significance from those things. And this past Saturday, we covered this, right? We covered the word amen, and I'm not going to get into it here. If you are interested, Pitcast is where to find it. It is at the bottom because, there is a lot that I put in playlist. The Pitcast was a playlist, and this is a rebranding almost of it. And so, while it is a different direction, it is still related to the other things, and so it's going in the same playlist. Regardless, Jason is much better at explaining these things than I am. I am just beginning to get the understanding of these words. It takes a while for me. I am not linguistically gifted, as some people are. And so the full grasp of this is not in my grasp yet. I am still working on something like that. But if you are interested in where the holy word Amen actually came from, I suggest you check it out over there because this is not it. This crown consists simply of the plumes of truth, but into the symbolism of these it is not necessary to go, for all this and more is in the crown first described. Now I would stand in complete opposition to what he is saying. The concealed crown, that is the one that is intrinsic to you. It is not an external one that you craft and place upon yourself. It is not a tool. It is instead God's tool. It is part of the dagger, part of the sword. That is your will. It is intrinsic to you. And so, it is necessary to go into that one. It is not necessary to go into this golden crown with precious stones and pieces of animals attached. It's almost like we've talked about those particular things before, right? If you are cutting off pieces of animals for ceremonial use, there's probably going to be some repercussions for that, and you're free to do things. I don't know that I would. The crimson cap implies concealment, because that is always good. It is also symbolical of the flood of glory that pours upon the magician from above. Is it glory, or did you misspell gory? Y'all blood worshippers? It is of velvet for the softness of that divine kiss. And crimson, for that it is the very blood of God, which is its life. So you're assigning blood to God. I got you. The band of gold is the eternal circle of perfection. There is a lot of allegories that can be taken from a band of gold. The 3 pentagrams symbolize the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Body, mind, and spirit. While the hexagram represents the magician himself. Ordinarily, pentagrams represent the microcosm, hexagrams the macrocosm, but here the reverse is the case, because in this crown of perfection, that which is below has become that which is above, and that which is above has become that which is below. If the diamond be worn, it is for the light which is before all manifestations in form. If an opal, it is to commemorate that sublime plan of the all, to fold and unfold in eternal rapture, to manifest as the many, that the many may become the one unmanifest. But this matter is too great for an elementary treatise on magic. The serpent, which is coiled about the crown, means many things, or rather one thing in many ways. It is the symbol of royalty and initiation, for the magician is anointed king and priest. It is the symbol of wisdom. That is what the serpent in the crown specifically symbolizes. It does not symbolize royalty. It does not symbolize initiation. It symbolizes wisdom. It also represents Hadith, of which one can here only quote these words. I am the serpent, secret serpent, coiled about the spring. In my coiling there is joy. If I lift up my head, I and my Nuitor one. If I droop down my head and shoot forth venom, there's rapture of the earth, and I and the earth are one. What is this? What is Hadit? A deity in Thelema. So this is one of the deities that he created wholesale out of cloth, right? This is the religion of Thelema is the one that Crowley founded. It is not based upon anything except his understanding of magical practices, which is entirely incomplete and definitely leading down the wrong path. And so you can absolutely take this to mean what you want if you have decided that Thelema is the religion to follow, which I am definitely not of that particular orientation. And I was just curious what that was, and now I know. So the serpent is also the Kundalini serpent, the magical force itself, the manifesting side of the Godhead of the magician, whose unmanifested side is peace and silence, of which there is no symbol. This is in part true. The Kundalini is often interpreted as a serpent, although it is not. It is a light source. Many people like to visualize it going sinuously around the different chakras as it ascends up the spinal column. Some people have it going in a spiral up the spinal column. That is one interpretation of it. My interpretation, and which I give in this book, is that there is two forces present. One is white, which is generally associated with the Kundalini energy, and one is dark, right? There is creation and destruction. There is light and dark, positive and negative, in perfect balance in creation. That is the goal. The process of magical illumination is pulling the feminine, dark energies from the bottom, the masculine, penetrative energies from the top, and blending them into your various chakras in various ways, whether that be sinuous around them or encircling them or infiltrating them or whatever. Right? To me, it is going to be intrinsically important that you use both sides of this. I fully believe that one of the reasons that I've actually been able to do things that other people wanted to and have not been able to is because I do use both sides of it. Now, the visualization of the mastery of the white, right? The Kundalini as it is normally understood, right? It is an unfolding that comes from the base for most people. Now, for me, the white is at the top and the dark is at the bottom for a variety of reasons. Many of them are directly revelatory to me through inspiration, so they may not be important to you, but they are talked about. But if you are doing this unfolding of the Kundalini, you are using the dark, right? Remember we talked about there is no light without the dark. There is no black without white. If you are pulling the white, you are using the black to constrain it. It is using both sides, even if you don't recognize it. It is the recognition, however, that is the defining point of it. Once you come to the recognition that you are using both halves, everything balances out a lot easier. And I say that this is not something that has not been at least partially effective for other people. But I am under the understanding that they did not have the understanding, right? I say that because of the results. That is not to say that nobody else ever had the understanding in the same way or in an effective way, but most of the people, and I do mean most, by a large degree, the majority, the supermajority even, they don't have the results. There are millions of people that practice Kundalini, and none of them have the results. Now, none is a big word. I am fully aware of that. I don't like using big words. I was being hyperbolic. All right. In the Hindu system, the great work is represented by saying that the serpent, which is normally coiled at the base of the spine, rises with her hood over the head of the yogi, there to unite with the Lord of all. The serpent is also he who poisons. It is that force which destroys the manifested universe, light and dark, destruction, and creation, positive and negative. This is also the emerald snake which encircles the universe. This matter must be studied in Liber 35, where this is discussed incomparably. In the hood of this serpent are the 6 jewels, 3 on each side. Ruby, emerald, and sapphire, the 3 holy elements made perfect, on both sides in equilibrium. And chapter 12, the robe. The robe of the magician may be varied according to his grade and the nature of his workings. There are 2 principal robes, the white and the black. Of these, black is the more important than the white, for the white has no hood. These robes may be varied by the addition of various symbols, but in any case, the shape of the robe is a dowel. Really, a T. Okay. In general symbolism, which we have adopted, leads us, however, to prefer the description of a robe which few dare to wear. This robe is of a rich silk of deep, pure blue, the blue of the night sky. It is embroidered with golden stars, with roses and lilies. Around the hem, its tail and its mouth, is the great serpent, while upon the front, from neck to hem, falls the arrow described in the vision of the 5th ether. This robe is lined with purple silk, on which is embroidered a green serpent coiled from neck to hem. The symbolism of this robe treats of high mysteries which must be studied in Liber 220 and Liber, I'm not trying, but having thus dealt with special robes, let us consider the use of the robe in general. The robe is that which conceals and which protects the magician from the elements. It is the silence and the secrecy with which he works, of the hiding of himself in the occult life of magic and meditation. This is the going away into the wilderness, where we find in the lives of all men of the highest types of greatness, and it is also the withdrawing of oneself from life as such. In another sense, it is the aura of the magician, that invisible egg or sheath which surrounds him. This aura must be shining, elastic, impenetrable, even by the light. That is, by any partial light that comes from one side. Nice try at a save there. I do, right, this to me, all of these tools that he is taking as external, I take as internal, right? I don't have a use for the chain and the scourge and things like that, but the aura and the cloak being the same is the divine chakra, right? That is, to me, a very real thing. Now, you have 7 internal chakras from the bottom to the top. They are the base, the sacral, the solar plexus. The heart, that which binds together, the throat, the third eye, and the crown, right? The as above trinity, the as below trinity, melded into your heart. When you bring the as below into accordance with the as above, and you realize, decide, and amplify, then you can direct that energy through the heart out into the divine. When you set your intentions, what you do is you bring your thoughts in accordance with your mind, as above, so below, through the heart with your true desires, and then you set that intention about halfway. If you take your hand and you extend it out with your palm up, not like this, but your palm up, right here, this is the emanation point, right here. This, if you take your fist like this and you do this, that's what it looks like, right? Half of it is in your hand, or half of it is in your arm, and half of it is sticking out. I mean, that's what it looks like. When I say that, I can't imagine that, but I've seen it. Now, that point is on both sides, and if you stick your arms out like this, and you draw a perfect circle all the way around you, from your hands to the base of your feet, right at your heel. There are 2 more points on your feet. It forms a perfect circle around you. That is the cloak. Now, when you place your intention, you don't set it here, you set it here. You set the intention halfway to the divine, and then you bring the divine in. Now, that is not a full thing. What is going to happen is the energy will move towards you. I describe in this book, It's like sitting in a pool, right? You're not in any danger, but you're completely immersed, and you can feel the water moving around you. At this point, the waters are all coming towards you. You are pulling the energy in to meet the halfway point of the manifested desire. That is how this works. I have just given you a whole lot of knowledge in one little bit, right? Way down in the middle of this study that almost nobody is going to watch. And the ones who have, or the ones who do, probably already know this. And so to me, the aura and the cloak are the same thing, but you don't need the actual cloak. And it shouldn't be either black or white. It should be a perfect blending of the two. Neither white nor black, but both. Not gray, but white and black in equal measure. Kind of like a checkerboard. As a matter of fact, that is the exact same reason why the Masons use a checkerboard on their floors. And they don't know that. Back to the text. The only light of the magician is from the lamp which hangs above his head as he stands in the center of the circle, and the robe, being open at the neck, opposes no obstacles to the passage of this light, and being open and very wide at the bottom, it permits that light to pass and illume them that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Chapter 13. The Book. The Book of Spells or of Conjurations is the record of every thought, word, and deed of the magician, and so it is not going to be a thing. There is no way that you are going to record every thought, word, and deed. Will not happen, therefore the book has to be incomplete, right? No, because you're not writing a book. It's not a physical book, even though I got one, right? This is the book of your life. It is the story of what you have done, and it is vitally important. You can even edit some pieces if you wish. For everything that he has willed is willed to a purpose. It is the same as if he had taken an oath to perform some achievement. Now, that is not to say that you cannot keep a record. It will not be a perfect record. You should be honest in it. If you are going to keep a record, it should be an honest record. Do not extrapolate. Do not exaggerate. Do not overemphasize. Do not try to deceive, right? Record the honest things that have happened so that you can use them as a reference, right? There is nothing wrong with that. Remember, though, ceremonies have power if you give them power. They have no power in and of themselves. All of the ceremonies are not necessary to record. Now, this book must be a holy book, not a scribbling book in which you jot down every piece of rubbish that comes into your head. It is written in Liber 7, verse 23. Every breath, every word, every thought, every deed is an act of love with thee. Be this devotion a potent spell to exorcise the demons of the five. Yeah, that sounds like some shit that would be in a Liber. This book must then be thus written. In the first place, the magician must perform the practice laid down in Liber or whatever that number is, so that he understands perfectly who he is and to what his development must necessarily tend. So much for the first page of the book. Let him then be careful to write nothing therein that is inharmonious or untrue, nor can he avoid this writing, for this is a magic book. If you abandon even for an hour the one purpose of your life, you will find a number of meaningless scratches and scrawls on the white vellum, and these cannot be erased. In such a case, when you come to conjure a demon by the power of the book, he will mock you. He will point to all this foolish writing, more like his own than yours. In vain you continue with the subsequent spells. You have broken by your own foolishness the chain which would have bound him. There was no chain that was going to bind him. I say this quite often, and I do not hesitate in saying so. If there is a book with a name of a demon written down, you can almost guarantee that there is no real true name of the demon written down. It is something that they have given you to deceive you into thinking that you have control. You do not have control of these entities. Be exceptionally careful if you are going to attempt to summon entities There are a variety of problems. I think it's the last chapter I talk about. Be very careful. Even in the calligraphy of the book must be firm, clear, and beautiful. In the cloud of incense it is hard to read the conjurations. When you peer dimly through the smoke, the demon will vanish, and you will have to write the terrible word, failure. And yet there is no page of this book on which this word is not written. But so long as it is immediately followed by a new affirmation, all is not lost. Really? You just told us something about yourself there, Mr. Crowley. I have had success. Right? I did not have to write failure on several of the endeavors in which I have endeavored. Right? The things that I have set out for myself, I have not only accomplished, but accomplished beyond my expectations. Not a failure. So there are at least some pages in my book in which it is not written the word failure. Does that mean I am perfect? Absolutely not. But I did accomplish my goal exactly the way that I set out to do it, beyond my expectations of it happening. But, once again, we do know that he did not have the fruit. And, as in this book the word failure is thus made of little account, so must also the word success never be employed. For it is the last word that may be written therein, and it is followed by a full stop. No, it is not. There are many goals in life. There is not just one. The full stop may never be written anywhere else. For the writing of the book goes on eternally. There is no way of closing the record until the goal of all has been attained. Let every page of this book be filled with song, for it is a book of incantation. Be careful with what you incant. Chapter 14. The Bell. The magical bell is best attached to the chain. In some systems of magic, a number of bells have been worn, sewn upon the hem of the robe, with the idea of symbolizing that every movement of the magician should make music. But the bell of which we speak is of more important element. This bell summons and alarms. It is also the bell which sounds at the elevation of the host. It is thus the astral bell of the magician. Footnote. During certain meditation practices, the student hears a bell resound in the depths of his being. It is not subjective, for it is sometimes heard by other people. Some magicians are able to call the attention of those with whom they wish to communicate at a distance by its means, or so it is said. I do not have any experience with this whatsoever. I've heard a sound. It is not bell-like at all. I've never heard a bell in a meditative practice for anything that I've done. That is not to say that it is not a possibility, but I have not had any experience with it at all. The bell of which we speak is a disc of some 2 inches in diameter, very slightly bent into a shape not unlike that of a cymbal. The hole in the center permits the passage of a short leather thong by which it may be attached to the chain. At the other end of the chain is the striker, which, in Tibet, is usually made of human bone. That lets you know right there that it is a bad thing to be fucking with. Right? You should not be using any piece of a human that is no longer alive at all. No teeth, no hair, no bones, no flesh, no blood, no nothing. The bell itself is made of electrum magicum, an alloy of the 7 metals blended together in a special manner. First, the gold is melted up with the silver during a favorable aspect of the sun and moon. These are then fused with tin when Jupiter is well dignified. Lead is added under an auspicious Saturn, and so for the quicksilver, copper, and iron, when Mercury, Venus, and Mars are of good augury. I have a small bit of expertise in this, and I have done some foundry work, not extensively. I was a blacksmith for a short amount of time. I made several things, and it was not a part of my life I'm unproud of. I was just unable to physically maintain the effort, so I had to stop. But it is exceedingly difficult to get correct proportions when making these things. Notice that we are not given any proportions. If you attempt to mix silver and gold, there are going to be problems. They are two metals that are remarkably dissimilar, even though they share some similar characteristics, right? You can beat them with a hammer and stretch them out. But mixing the two together is hard. It is not something that is easy. That is why we do not do it, right? We could stretch gold much farther if we put silver with it, and that is not to say it is impossible. It is just exceedingly difficult. And if you are going to do it in such a manner that it will bear some fruit that have any value whatsoever, then the proportions have to be correct. The same is true for all of the rest of these. Quicksilver is its own very different type of thing. Quicksilver is Mercury, if you were unaware. Now, they have Mercury listed as the planet. You could have said Mercury as the element, because that's what it is. But the way that we get it, generally speaking, is from refining gold, right? It is separated from gold in the refining process. Does that tell you something about this process? Now, we're adding lead, which is another one that is going to be difficult to combine with gold, although they have fairly similar atomic weights, right? Adding tin is not that hard because tin is kind of a mutable metal. It actually works in several alloys. It has a wider range of percentage that you can work with. But again, if the proportions are not correct, you will not have anything usable on the outside of it. The metals will separate. There will be problems if you do not have proportions correct. And we don't have any. There is not a single proportion, right? It could have gave us a finger's width, and then we would have had something to work with. A gram, a pound, an ounce, something. But no, we don't have anything, right? It's just an alloy of 7 metals, because if you just take these 7 metals and you do it right, then you're going to get this. No. I'm here to tell you that it is even dangerous to attempt to do these things. Vaporizing quicksilver is stupid, right? That has been the cause of so much death over the course of human history because they didn't realize what they were doing, right? It is intrinsically dangerous to refine gold because of the separation of quicksilver. That's not taken into consideration that you can get burnt, right? The vapors can kill you. Be careful if you are listening to Crowley. The sound of this bell is indiscreet. And also, on top of that, what are you making out of this? A usable object? Something that is going to resonate? Bruh, do you know how hard it is to cast a bell? Do you know how hard it is to make a bell actually make a noise? If you don't realize how hard it is, I want you to do one thing, right? This is remarkably simple. Go look at the history of the Liberty Bell. They struck that thing exactly one time and it cracked. And that was by somebody who knew what the fuck they were doing. It was by somebody who had devoted their entire life to creating bells. And they still had a problem. If you, as a novice, attempt to do this, you can have problems, right? And I understand it's 2 inches, right? It's about that big. That seems like it would be easy. It is harder to do smaller objects. Now, there is a limit, right? Once you get to a certain size, it is harder to do bigger. But for the most part, medium size is easier than small, and it is easier than large. Without even the minutest jar, its single notes tinkle fainter and fainter into silence. At the sound of this bell, the universe ceases for an indivisible moment of time and attends to the will of the magician. Let him not interrupt the sound of this bell. Let this be that which is written in Liber 7, verse 31. There is a solemnity of the silence. There is no more voice at all. As the magical book was a record of the past, so the magical bell is a prophecy of the future. The manifested shall repeat itself again and again, always a clear, thin note, always the simplicity of music, yet ever less and less disturbing, the infinite silence until the end. We got one more to get through. This is going to be the last one before we wrap it up. So, Chapter 15. The Lamen. The breastplate, or lamen of the magician, is a very elaborate and important symbol. In the Jewish system, we read that the high priest was wear a plate with 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Israel, with all their correspondences, and in this plate were kept the Urim and Thummim. Footnote. Scholars are uncertain as to what these really were, although apparently they were methods of divination. Alright, conspiracy time. In the book of Exodus, which I have read through in its entirety, it is available in the Bible study, we discovered a lot of things, right? We discovered that it is probable, I don't want to say likely, even though that is probably a better word, it is probable that what the Ark of the Covenant was a battery capacitor combination. It was composed of organic and inorganics in specific ratios. It was encased in a temple that had linen and wool, which surrounded it, which, by the way, if you were unaware, creates static electricity. And then connecting this entire tabernacle, not temple, tabernacle together was bands of gold, right? Gold is a wonderful conductor. And so they laced these wooden poles with gold, and those wooden poles with the gold all came together at the altar on which the Ark of the Covenant was sat. There was a collection of static electricity which gathered between the wings of the cherubim, and that was how you communicated with God. Right? That's what we learned in Exodus. Part of that was, in my estimation, they went and got this thing called the Shamir. I believe that this was the entire reason why Moses went to Ararat. I believe that it was quartz that had a radioactive element of uranium within it. This is a thing, right? There are green quartz stones that contain uranium. I believe that this was a device used to direct the flow of the electricity that was collected and amplified by the Ark of the Covenant, and that is why they could direct that to defeat the enemies in the manner that they did. But it also served another purpose. It was a power source. It was a battery. And one of the things that this power source apparently was able to do was to make these two stones glow. Right? The Urim and the Thummim weren't lots that you cast. They asked a question, and it was a yes-no question, and the Urim meant yes, and the Thummim no, I think. It's been a while since we did the study, but one was yes and one was no. And when you asked the question, one would light up, and the other one would remain dark, and therefore you got your answer. That's what's described in the book of Exodus. And so to me, the Ark of the Covenant is going to be the power source for that. The priests were given a robe that they were to wear, and that robe had metal attachments that brushed the ground. You want to know why? To keep them grounded. And if you didn't have the proper techniques, right? If the wooden pole wasn't run through the rings on the ark, or if you got too close to the ark, it would reach out and touch you, right? It was a static shock. You got hit by electricity. It is evident from reading through what it is, but this was still in the time when electricity was fairly new. Right? This was not long after Benjamin Franklin. This was 1912 was the date we got for this, and so this is right around the First World War. We did have electricity, but we didn't really have the understanding. It was not widespread. It was not in great use even yet, and so they may not know what it was, but there's significant reason to believe the things that I have said, and I have outlined those in some extensive detail in the Bible study if you are interested in that. The modern lamen is, however, a simple plate, which, being worn over the heart, symbolizes Tifereth, and it should therefore be a harmony of all the other symbols in one. It connects naturally by its shape with the circle and the pentacle, but it is not sufficient to repeat the design of either. The lamen of the spirit, whom one wishes to evoke, is both placed in the triangle and worn on the breast. But in this case, since that which we wish to evoke is in nothing partial but whole, we shall have but a single symbol to combine the two. The great work will then form the subject of the design. Footnote. Some writers have actually confused the layman with the pentacle, usually through a misunderstanding of the nature of the latter. Dr. D's Sigillum Dia Amath makes a fine pentacle, but it would be useless as a layman. Eliphas Levi made several attempts to draw one or the other. He never seemed sure which because he was an idiot. If you are unaware, I have done Ritual and Dogma by Eliphas Levi, and we discovered there much what we are discovering here. He did not know what he was talking about. Fortunately, he knows better now. The laments given in the Lesser and Greater Keys of Solomon are rather better, but we know of no perfect example. The design on the cover of The Star of the West represents an early effort of Frater P. In this layman, the magician must place these secret keys of his power. You're going to place your knowledge into a mortal thing, you say. The pentacle is merely the material to be worked upon, gathered together and harmonized, but not yet in operation. The parts of the engine arranged for use or even put together, but not yet set in motion. In the layman, these forces are already at work. The accomplishment is prefigured. In the system of Abramelin, the lamen is a plate of silver upon which the holy guardian angel writes in dew. This is another way of expressing the same thing, for it is he who confers the secret of that power which should be herein expressed. St. Paul expresses the same thing when he says that the breastplate is faith and can withstand the fiery darts of the wicked. This faith is not blind self-confidence and credulity. It is that self-confidence which only comes when self is forgotten. There is a missing figure. It is the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel which confers this faith. The task of attaining this knowledge and conversation is the sole task of him who would be called adept. An absolute method for achieving this is given in the 8th Ether. And there's another illustration that we do not have. And that's going to bring us to the end of this variety of chapters. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to some somewhat difficult topics. I understand I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency with to step on toes when I relay those, but it is not something I apologize for. Right? It is not intentional. It is not something I apologize for. Once again, I feel like I have laid out fairly clearly my objections. I'm not really going to extrapolate here a whole lot more, but maintaining your intentionality in the right way is vitally important. The understanding that you do not need any of these tools is vitally important. Now, that is the external tools, not the internal tools. If you take these as allegories for internal things, you will come out a lot better than if you were attempting to make the tools. It is exceedingly difficult to describe them in accuracy. We are not even trying, apparently, right? We are not given dimensions or measurements. We're just kind of told to wing it, right? And so, take from Mr. Crowley what you will, but definitely take whatever he says with a grain of salt. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was stated. Put it in the box down below, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or pick up a copy of the book where I teach you to do this responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.